Guten Abend, good evening, and a very cordial welcome here again, I should say, for the fifth time here in our offices at 6. It's the fifth cybersecurity event that we are organizing together with the Swiss Risk Association and the Swiss Finance Institute. Thank you very much for taking time in your busy agenda in these busy days of the year to spend this evening with us. As we thought about topics for this event, we hopefully found, again, an interesting and insightful agenda for the evening. Looking back a little bit, this is the fifth time we organized this, and remember very well how, Sandro, we discussed in the midst of the pandemic what would be, the best format, if at all, to do this in 2020. Yeah, we chose some very hybrid format. Yeah, just with a few people in the room 4 years ago. Then we changed to some semi-hybrid on-site format this year again because we found it very good format. We focus on presence. Yeah, so. You are here. This is not live broadcasted. We record it. We make it available afterwards to interested parties via our website. But this is the event here that takes place. Geopolitics obviously will be a topic, no surprise. In the pursuit of the past years, when we had regulators here, we had practitioners here, we had academic representatives here, focusing on a variety of topics, regulation obviously, but latest trends in cyber, AI obviously was a focus already. We tried to see what is now the topic that is of interest for us here in Switzerland, but also beyond. And therefore you will hear about geopolitics, you will hear from practitioners, from representatives from university about some topics that are hopefully of interest. And I will now hand over to Frau Roth, Carolin, who, like in the past years, will run us through the event. And
so much for that. Thank you, Jochen.
Welcome.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Carolin. I believe, Jochen, this is my third time. I was never there during those super hybrid and the COVID days, so it's nice to see so many people in the room once again. And let's show you the program very briefly, because as always, we have a couple of really great keynotes for you, different topics altogether. So what we always do, if you're here for the first time, please keep all your questions, any comments that you may have for the end, because at the end we have the panel discussion, and that's really when you get the chance to put your questions or your comments to all of the speakers, and we'll kick off the panel discussion with whatever hasn't been discussed yet. So this is really your chance towards the end of the program to talk to some of the experts here. We don't have an app for this, just simply raise your hand. We have room microphones, but I trust that you will be very much interactive, as you have been in the past couple of years. Without further ado, no further housekeeping, phones on silent, I assume. Let's kick it off with Stefan Soesanto. Let's talk about the geopolitical context of cyber. Stefan, great to have you.
Hello. Can you hear me? Oh, perfect. Well, thank you for having me. My bio, I guess I'll switch around. 16 to 9, so it's a little bit... But all the other slides are fine. So a little bit of caveat before I talk. The team I'm leading at the Center for Security Studies, our primary stakeholder is the Swiss Armed Forces, is the Swiss Cyber Command. So what our job is not to help them defend their infrastructure. Other people's responsibilities are those. But they task us to look at what everybody else is doing in that space. So what are all the countries surrounding Switzerland are doing, what different regions, what's happening there in Asia, in the Middle East, how are they reorganizing their military structures, what kind of evolutionary trends do we see in cyber threat actors, what are the kind of unusual and unique campaigns that we're seeing. So we're not working like the National Cybersecurity Center, but we look at what kind of strange aspects are there out there, and what are the lessons learned that we can what are the lessons that we can learn from them? Should we guard against them, or should we try to replicate what is happening in the world? All right. So the first item I want to walk through you. I called it breaking taboos. There are 4 aspects that I see, at least in the world, that are happening, which is really different from what we've previously seen. So the first item is the integration of civilians and foreigners in state-directed and supported cyber operations. This is primarily, not only, but primarily done via the IT Army of Ukraine. I don't know if you've heard about it, but also others like Kiba Sportiv, where it's literally this group is cooperating with the Ukraine Military Intelligence Service, running operations against Russian military officers, breaching their email accounts, breaching the email accounts of their wives, their spouses, their children, to gain intelligence. Just in terms of the IT Army, if you've never heard about it, it was established, when was it, February 26th, so a few days into the invasion, when Mikhail Fedorov, who is the Minister of Digital Transformation in Ukraine, went online and said, hey, we want to create the IT Army, anybody can join. And he did this on Twitter in English, so it's not just an Ukrainian audience he was aiming at, but an international audience. And of course in Ukrainian on Telegram as well as on Facebook. We also had this in Switzerland, right, where Cedric Wermuth came out and posted, hey, because of the war, maybe you want to conduct DDoS campaigns. There wasn't a big outcry in Switzerland against this, but I think a lot of practitioners were like, this is illegal. You can't do this. DDoS are still cyber criminal activities. You shouldn't encourage civilians to do this, right? And here in the IT Army case, we literally have a government that encourages civilians from across the world to join the IT Army and participate in this. Interestingly enough, the Ministry of Education in Ukraine also got involved. They posted this, I translated it for you, on the official website. They literally invited scholars, students to join the IT Army. So they literally said, hey, help us DDoS your Russian infrastructure. It's something that we've never seen before, that a state would essentially ask citizens to join their cause. In the beginning, around 307,000 people from across the globe joined the IT Army, including Swiss citizens. So we know that people living in Switzerland have joined the IT Army, whether these are Ukrainians, whether these are Swiss citizens or Swiss citizens from other countries living in Switzerland. But you look at the Telegram channel, you look at the chats, we hear German, we hear Brazilian, Portuguese being talked, we hear Dutch, we hear Spanish. It's like from across the world. Literally, that's what a few Ukrainians have created. A literally army of volunteers out there that are DDoSing Russian digital infrastructure. And we don't know how to classify them. Are they cyber criminals? Are they mercenaries? They don't get paid, so they're not mercenaries by law. Are they cyber criminals? Which laws have they broken? Or are they just concerned citizens? We don't know how to deal with them, not under international law, nor under our own jurisdictions. The IT Army is a huge thing in Ukraine. So on the left top side, you see the annual presentation of Mikhail Fedorov, Minister of Digital Transformation. He literally has a slide about all the great things that the IT Army has done. On the right side, you see a poster from a movie, Ukraine movie called First Code. It's literally showing you, it's kind of a documentary thriller movie that starts with Ukrainian students during the Soviet times when they first got a computer on their hands, first were able to code. And then they run through history until they get to the IT Army of Ukraine. And so this is what we have created. This is the culmination of our fruits. So this is what we know the IT Army looks like, if you ever wondered about this. This is part of it is public. We published a report. On the left side, you have essentially a DDoS component that is persistent, that is organized via a Telegram channel, but not anymore. Now they have public tools that people can download. And essentially, it's 2 clicks away. That's as much as you need to participate in the IT Army. Persistent in the means that they will DDoS your resources continuously, your websites, individual servers, individual ports, and they will be persistent in the sense that they will do this not only for a few hours or a few days, they will do this for weeks and months continuously. We know of several Russian websites that have never come back online. They simply gave up. Every time they came back online, they would DDoS again. It was hopeless for them. They couldn't do any business anymore. On the right side, you see an in-house team that the IT Army has. They have been running destructive campaigns. They have taken down RuTube. RuTube is a Russian YouTube clone. So all the Russian influencers, when the war happened, they couldn't monetize themselves anymore on YouTube, right? So they went to RuTube. So RuTube essentially grew massively. the IT Army's in-house team ran a destructive campaign where literally they deleted everything on their servers. And the only reason YouTube was able to stand up is because this attack happened during Victory Day, so they knew something was coming. So they had cold backups. Within 3 days, they were able to, they recovered. But imagine this happens to YouTube. If someone is able to delete all the servers of YouTube, how massive the impact would be. Lusk is an energy company in the St. Petersburg Oblast. They've essentially said they ran a destructive campaign against Lusk as well, which caused blackouts. We don't know whether this is true because the weather conditions at the time were rather rough. So there were natural blackouts as well. So we don't know what the reality there is. They also ran a campaign against Gazprom Bank. Gazprom Bank is the largest bank that deals with gas money and all the other stuff. And they literally took out all their SMS services, so you couldn't log into the website, their hotlines, they DDoSed everything. You had the president or vice president of Gazprom Bank at a cybersecurity event in Russia, were literally on stage. They said, this is something that we've never experienced. This was done with creativity, and we need to guard against this. We know the in-house team is essentially led by the SBU, which is the Ukrainian intelligence service, together with people from the Ukraine Ministry of Defense. So, and they're essentially also hiring foreigners. If you go on their application forms, which they do every 4 months, it's a Google form. They literally ask you, have you served in the intelligence service before? How many years experience do you have in offensive cybersecurity? Do you have a master's degree, a PhD? So questions that no hacking group will ask you. And so we don't know whether any Swiss citizens are involved in this, in the in-house team, but it's quite concerning when foreigners are literally, without any monetary transfer, are literally volunteering for this to run essentially destructive campaigns under the guise of a foreign intelligence service. The second taboo that has been broken is a shift from cyber warfare, which we usually think about targeting military assets, toward one of economic warfare. So this has a lot to do with threat actors learning, particularly during the Ukraine-Russia conflict, that it's really difficult to touch military assets, both in speed, also time, in creating discernible effects, and maintaining control while you're doing your operations. The additional component here is that you need operational tempo. You cannot just do one great campaign during the war and nothing else, right? You need to do an operation pretty much every week, if not every day. And so there is a shift away from targeting military assets because it's just not possible. These assets are simply not reachable that easily, toward economic warfare, to target the private sector. Here's the main screenshot from the website of the Ministry of, Ukrainian Military Intelligence Service. So they literally targeted, in this case, an ISP in Russia. And it's called Akado Telecom, right? So the first thing is already, in terms of attribution, no other intelligence service does this. They don't online, they posted, hey, we did this operation. The NSA doesn't do it, the Swiss intelligence service doesn't do it, the British intelligence service doesn't do it. The Ukrainians are unique in that. They literally come out and say, we did this, and we're proud of it. And who do you think got involved? Yes, the IT Army. The IT Army got involved in this as well. So the IT Army and the Ukraine Military Intelligence Service do cooperate in terms of campaigns. Not only in this campaign, also another campaign which targeted banks in Russia. Not one bank, but multiple banks in Russia. They target everything. So essentially for Russians, during that time, all the ATMs went down. You couldn't do any card payments anymore. It's like it's game over. This was another one. This was during the invasion of Kursk. You've all heard about the Ukrainian invasion of Kursk, right? They essentially, what the IT Army did, they targeted ISPs in the Kursk region. They targeted gas stations, so people couldn't pay anymore with their cards, and so forth. So there is what we're seeing, a military component that gets into this. It's not just the intelligence service and stuff like that. The third part is, and I only have 5 minutes, but it's the repurposing of bug bounty programs in wartime. So there's this one example that we have, which is quite prolific. It's called Hacken-Proof. Hacken-Proof is essentially, so Hacken is a company headquartered in Estonia, so a NATO country. They offer a platform called Hacken-Proof for their bug bounties. And they had 2 bug bounty programs in relation to Ukraine. One defensive one, so to help the Ukraine government and Ukraine companies secure their infrastructure better, but also an offensive one. This is from the offensive one. The instructions are pretty clear. Select a Russian propaganda and infrastructure website, find critical vulnerabilities, submit a report. That's it. We'll put it in the good hands of the Ukrainian cyber forces. Again, this is a company based in a NATO country. Can you imagine if a company here in Switzerland would do this? They would say, hey, select a Ukrainian propaganda and infrastructure website. Send us all the vulnerabilities. We'll hand it over to the Russian FSB. Can you imagine how big the outcry would be? But that's the world we're living in now, right? So in terms of what services would they like to have vulnerabilities from? Hosting providers, telecom, ISPs, aerospace, air control, industrial control system, public services, banks, insurance companies, energy, oil and gas, transportation, and the last one, retail. So it literally covers everything. And what are they interested in? They literally say, please don't waste time on low and medium severity vulnerabilities. We're only looking for this good stuff, remote code execution and stuff like that. So really the hard stuff that usually you pay millions for, right? The fourth one is that we have a repurposing of bug bounty programs and hacking contests in peacetime as well, particularly the Chinese government. And I think there are very few eyes currently on what China has been doing for the past years. Since 2018, we have a law in China where literally any Chinese citizen that finds a vulnerability in any kind of software or hardware product, they will have to report it to the state, to the Chinese state. And the institution or the agency they're working with then, well, they're connected to the Chinese intelligence service. So we did a study looking at how the system essentially works, how civilian hackers in the Chinese ecosystem that participate in capture the flag exercises, in international hacking contests, how they are connected to Chinese companies. The Chinese companies then have regulations where they have to essentially report vulnerabilities to the state, not only that are received from their researchers, but they essentially have almost like an annual kind of list of, you have to deliver 20 vulnerabilities to the Chinese government if you want to be in good terms with the Chinese government, if you want to get contracts from the state. Right? And all of this is connected essentially to the Chinese Ministry of State Security, but also other agencies in different regions within China. We also looked at capture the flag exercises. You cannot imagine how huge the capture the flag exercise ecosystem is in China. You've probably never heard of some of these contests, but some of these contests literally have 35,000 people participating in one capture the flag exercise. And these contests are used to exchange knowledge in terms of, okay, how do you actually hack in certain systems? What are the tactics that are employed? But also to get to know people in the community. So everybody learns from each other. And companies are involved in this. So if you're good in this contest, you'll get a call from a company. Or in some cases, we know of one case where a foreigner essentially participated in a Chinese CTF contest. He was later approached by the Ministry of State Security to work for him. We also look at cyber ranges. Cyber ranges are the latest kind of trends that everybody's kind of talking about. Also, the VBS is interested in this stuff. But there's so many different cyber ranges and so many different products they're targeting. A lot of them are Western products. They don't look at Chinese products. They look at Western products. And you can just imagine if you have thousands of people just looking at Western products, how much vulnerabilities they're going to find. And these are not just amateurs. These are literally students that are geniuses. They will find vulnerabilities that nobody else finds. And you can be Google, you can be Microsoft. You have, in the long run, you have no chance against this. Just the sheer volume will overtake you. So of course, you have the geopolitical contest of China moving away from Western products, whether it's microchips, but also smartphone applications, all kinds of software products. So you see the trend that the Chinese want their own platforms. And it's not just because of vain or because they like their Chinese industry. It's literally, they know what's going to come. That if the shit hits the fan with the Americans, they have an arsenal, essentially, where they can target the Americans in any kinds of infrastructure. Every product that we're currently using is a target. And that's pretty scary. And you only see, I think you see the early days of what's happening when you see in the United States that telecom providers get breached. 8 telecommunications providers last week, right? Those huge announcements. This is just the beginning. They're probably in every infrastructure in the United States already. Military infrastructures are probably also compromised. And so if this gets somehow rolled over and affects Switzerland and Swiss companies because we do business with China or with the Americans, I don't know what will happen. But with that, I leave you. These are the 4 breaking taboos, and I thank you very much.
Stefan, thank you so much for that. I think there's definitely a lot to pick up on during the discussion, so thank you so much for those insights. Next up is Maya Bundt, Chair of the Cyber Resilience Chapter of the Swiss Risk Association.
Thank you, Carolin. I will have the very, very difficult task to speak after Stefan. My talk is called Switzerland's Answer. Thankfully, most of the kind of breaking taboos weren't directed at Switzerland yet. So hopefully it stays like that for a while, because I'm not quite sure. I kind of got my goosebumps out because I was thinking, maybe we're not doing enough. But actually, I was trying to be a bit more positive because I think Switzerland is actually has come a long way in the last few years, and I want to give you a little bit of an overview of little bits and pieces that have come together, and then you can read up and make up your own mind of where we stand, because that is always the question. What are we doing? Are we doing enough? Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit very shortly about the National Cyber Strategy, about the NCSC, that's the National Cybersecurity Center, our new Bundesamt, and the Cybersecurity Hub, about the Swiss Cyber Command and Spark, and finally about the FSCSC, that's the Financial Sector Cybersecurity Center. For those of you who do not know that yet, it's a great invention. Okay, let's start. The National Cyber Strategy is one answer to the ongoing digitalization and the increasing threats. We have just heard the threats are moving. They are kind of breaking boundaries that they haven't done before. So question is the strategy still up to par? We're going to look at that definitely. The Cyber Strategy 2023 is building on 2 other strategies that were put in place in 2012 and 2019. This is the 3rd cyber strategy, and what is special about it, it has no end. So all the other cyber strategies were for a certain time, and then they had a lot of implementation topics and measures, and they were implemented, and then a new strategy was developed. In this case, the idea is that the threat landscape out there and the underlying basics for having the strategy in place are changing so fast that Switzerland decided we want to be able to change the strategy more frequently. We want to be able to review the strategy more frequently and adjust where needed, not wait for 5 years, and then we've gone into a wrong direction for 5 years. So that's the strategy. You find it on the internet, and it's an easy read. It's a very easy read. What I want to point out is the vision. We are all here business people, right? And many of us have large digitalization projects ongoing in our companies. There is definitely some IT projects that are running. There is definitely some question about AI being implemented for better marketing, for streamlining processes, etc. All of this are opportunities for us, right? We want to use technology, we want to use data in order to be faster, cheaper, have better offerings, get better. These are the opportunities that we can reap, but we can only reap the opportunities if we are secure. So I really, really like the Swiss cyber strategy that it starts with the opportunity and not with a risk, not with a threat. So the cyber strategy that was adopted last year has 5 strategic objectives. The first one is empowerment. People and companies should be empowered so they can basically secure and save themselves. It's I think a concept that resonates with many people. It's not that the federal administration comes together and is out there and secures us. It secures us as banks, secures us as insurance companies, secures us as SMEs. But it helps educate, it helps build processes, it helps build structures that companies out here, the economy, but also us as individuals, that we can help ourselves. So this is the first strategic objective. The number behind the strategic objectives are the measures. So there are a number of measures associated to these strategic objectives, and the number is the number of those. So the second strategic objective is secure digital services and infrastructure. I think that is basically a very, very basic need that we all have. We need that in order to function as an economy, as a society. So that's the second strategic objective. The third one is my favorite because it is so long that you can't really read it. It's defense against cyber incidents. So when something happens, be prepared and act. Fourth one is a prosecution and combating of cybercrime, which is one of the biggest problems, not warlike scenarios at the moment for our economy, but cybercrime is a big driver. And we see that in the insurance statistics, we see that everywhere. I don't know if you're going to talk about that, Anastasia, but combating cybercrime for us as a society is a really important objective. And last but not least is Switzerland's place in the world. Switzerland's place as with Geneva as an international hub for diplomacy, Switzerland as potentially also a hub for cyber diplomacy. So these are the strategic objectives, and these objectives, they follow 4 principles. And again, I think this is very important. I only bring them for you to understand how to put the strategy into perspective. The first one is a risk-based and comprehensive approach. So the strategy itself is really broad. So as the president for the steering committee for the implementation of the national cyber strategy, we are looking at the strategy in detail and try to work out specific KPIs. How can we measure the strategy? While doing this, you see how broad the strategy is, because it spans not only the federal administration or the cantons. No, it spans all of our economy, but also of society. So this is a really broad approach, and it's risk-based. The second one is a joint approach. So the implementation is not, again, by the federal administration, but the implementation is divided up, and the federal administration supports bits and pieces. But in general, everybody is asked to participate also in implementing the strategy and becoming more and more cyber mature. And also the strategy has been, or the process of the strategy development has always asked all the stakeholders to participate. Now, the steering committee that I lead is also very diverse. So there is people in there from the administration, but also people from the economy, people from academia, and people from civil society. And we even have a couple of them here in this room, so that makes me especially happy. So that is also, I think, Switzerland's approach in bringing the relevant people and stakeholders together and giving them a seat at the table. And this is how it's working here. The third principle is a really important one, and Swiss people will relate to that. It's subsidiarity and partnership of the state. So it's a little bit different to other countries where the state is very strong and basically says and does. And here is more is a lending hand approach, and obviously active communication. So that's the a very, very short kind of high-level view on the Swiss cyber strategy. So something is going on, and something is moving towards a more secure and cyber mature Switzerland. Hopefully, also combating some of those nasty developments that we've seen in Stefan's talk. Okay, what Switzerland has also done is very fresh this year, as of this year, we have a Bundesamt für Cybersicherheit, the National Cybersecurity Center. We had a delegate for cybersecurity before. We had a Meldestelle, Melanie, some of you might know that. But now cyber has found a home in the federal administration, and the home has become bigger and more visible. So I think that is also a showing of the importance that we put in Switzerland onto that topic. There is also a strategy for this National Cybersecurity Center. I think it's very, very, it speaks for itself, making cyber threats understandable, providing the means. Again, it's the helping hand, right? Not we will prevent it for you, but we will help you understand and prevent them yourselves. Limiting the damage from cyber incidents and increasing the security of digital products and services. That goes into the organization. What you see is, I don't want to go into all of the special things, but if you look at the big units that are in the National Cybersecurity Center, you see that you have operative cybersecurity, you have the GovCert, you also have analysis and prevention. I think that is really important in terms of understanding the threats and also helping others help themselves, and obviously the planning and steering. And I have to run a little bit faster because the time is running out, but one of the things that has been in existence for quite a while, and probably many of your companies, the companies that you work in, are partners of the Cybersecurity Hub. It's for critical infrastructure, and it has over 1,000 organizations that come together in this cybersecurity hub and exchange information. It was built up in times of Melanie, and I'm sitting on the board of a bank. And when we get our Lagebericht, our threat landscape report, there are many kind of graphs and information directly from this cybersecurity hub, because it shows the current environment in Switzerland. It allows banks, for example, or insurance company to talk to each other, etc. So it's a great, I think, system for Swiss companies to join up with the federal administration, exchange information, and learn from that, and become better that way. So the Cybersecurity Hub is also, I think, an information now on the website of the administration where you can look it up. Stefan has already, I mean, he can probably talk way more with insights about the Swiss Cyber Command. You would, from Stefan's talk, I must say, I thought, well, this is, we've had it for years, for a long time. No, we have a Cyber Command since the 1st of January of this year. It's brand new. It's brand new. I would say, finally, Switzerland has woken up. It took a while to build this, but it's here. And it's picking up steam and working obviously with the ETH and many other also academic institutions in order to get better one very, very specific example that I wanted to bring here is Spark. Who has heard of Spark in this room? 1, 2 people? So Spark is I think is a genius thing. So Spark is a as you know, for the Swiss people, it's clear that people in Switzerland, male people in Switzerland, need to go to the army, right? You have to mandatory time in the army, and so this is female. I mean, girls also can join the army, but they don't have to. This is a pre-army course that kids, young people can take. You have to have a Swiss passport. You have to be 16 years of age. And then you can sign up for this course. And it's about 300 hours of learnings. It's an in-depth learning on cybersecurity. And if you go through it, and if you kind of pass all the tests and go through it, you have a much higher chance to be then selected for the Swiss Cyber Command for your mandatory service. So this is, I think, a really good example of how, how talent can be developed at a young age, how talent can be brought to the topic at a young age. And I'm looking forward to see many people using that, and maybe even if they do not then join, the Cyber Command, but maybe they get an interest in cybersecurity and then join SIX or a bank or a security team somewhere else. So this is I think an excellent example of what Switzerland is doing in this aspect. And the last example I want to bring is the Financial Sector Cybersecurity Center. Many of you working in banks will know this. This is a public-private partnership where the banks, the insurance companies, and some of the National Cybersecurity Center and others really work together to make the financial sector more cyber mature. They exchange information, they do exercises. There was just a large exercise happening, I think, in November. Tabletop exercises to see how can we help us, how can we stabilize if something really big is happening. So this is an initiative from the industry together with the federal administration. And similar centers are popping up in the health industry now. I'm pretty sure others will as well. So this is really a way forward where industry and administration can work together to become more or to make the world a little bit more cyber resilient. So with this, my bottom line is a lot is happening in Switzerland. Some people say, well, we are slow. What is happening? Are we fast enough? I think a lot is happening. So let's give that time to develop, but not let up. So onwards and upwards towards a more cyber resilient future. Thank you.
Maya, thank you so much for that. That was the Swiss response to cyber threats. Let's now talk about cyber risk insurance with Professor Dr. Anastasia Kartasheva. She's an associate professor of the School of Finance at the University of St. Gallen, and she's also faculty member at the Swiss Finance Institute. Good to have you.
So thank you very much, first of all, for inviting me to present our thoughts on cyber insurance here. And, let me start with this quote, which you have on the screen. I took it last year from the US Agency for International Development, but in fact, you could find similar quotes in any international regulatory body or national body. And basically what it says is that why does cybersecurity matter for economic growth and trade? Cybersecurity is critical to maintaining economic and financial stability So people recognize that it's a very important element for our growth. Then 300 global CEOs cited the lack of cybersecurity as the single greatest threat to the global economy over the ensuing decade. So it means that it's important for growth, but it also is extremely costly, and actually it prevents investment and it reduces our ability to develop. And finally, the last point here is that the global cost of cybersecurity is estimated to top 8 trillion in 1993. The figure is larger than the national economies of all but 2 countries, United States and the People's Republic of China. So of course, in that respect, it's fair to say that the estimate is very approximate. But if something is measured in trillions, it means that it does have some economic importance. So then if you see a risk of this size, you would think, why don't you insure? Because, okay, cybersecurity is a new and interesting and, kind of developing risk, but it's not really the only large risks that we face. We have hurricanes, we have earthquakes, and they all can be really devastating to our economies. We have, different market crashes, and that also can be quite, it's also measured like in trillions. So why don't we organize an insurance market for cybersecurity? And that's exactly what we wanted to ask. So, of course, it's not ungrounded, and there are some insurance markets, there are some insurance policies that already are in the market in Switzerland in particular. And here's the snapshot of the analysis that was done by the Swiss Insurance Association, basically a review of the companies, looking at what kind of policies are out there, how much protection you have, and you see that actually this protection is really not that large. Okay, so in terms of, if you compare it to the size of losses that you have, it's only about 9% of risks that you have protected. So for some reason, we could figure it for hurricanes, but we still couldn't figure it for cyber insurance. And that's exactly the question that we are discussing in our paper, we're analyzing in our paper. So in this paper, the market that we focus on is the market in the US. So if you look at the market size, which I have here on the left side of the picture, it's the market of about 8 billion. Okay, so it's quite substantial. However, if you consider the size of this market relative to the size of the insurance industry in the US, it's actually extremely tiny. So if you look here, my second bullet point, basically it's like less than 1% of the property and casualty market in the US. So what do these policies cover? Essentially, these policies cover 2 types of risks. They cover the first-party damages, so that would be data breach, forensics, restoration services, extortion, and ransom payments. So basically, this insurance company is going to provide you the service to negotiate the ransom, which is like a very common way of extracting financial gains from firms, and they're going to pay for it. And also, it covers some third-party coverages, the cost of defending against public or private litigation, the fines from lawsuits, etc. So it's basically like PR type of management. Okay. Actually, we also reviewed what are how these policies differ across different insurers, and I can tell you that there is a lot of variation. So some companies cover a lot, some companies don't cover so much. However, if, I think the key point that I'd like to highlight here is that it's still a very tiny market. Like if you look at the size of the US economy, these numbers are really nothing. And actually, if, you look at the global footprint, US is probably the most advanced, as I already mentioned, and according to Swiss Re, only about 10% of cyber risk globally is insured, okay, and the rest remains uninsured. So then we really want to understand why, and of course we want to understand why in order to make it better. So what we highlight in our analysis is that essentially if you think about cyber risk, this is really the type of risk that has these three special features that I put on the slide. So the first one is that it has heavy tails, okay? And, basically it means that if you have the cyber event, this event can be against a particular firm, then it's not really a big deal. But when I talk to my colleagues in the industry, in the insurance industry, what they tell me is that, Anastasia, we don't really know what is the tail for cyber risk. It's we know what is the tail for hurricane risk. We know even what's the tail for the hurricane in Florida, which became a big topic in the US these days. But for cyber risk, the only event that we could really observe was the attack of the Russian government on the Ukrainian government, which is called NotPetya, so that was the biggest event. And then there were a number of analyses that were done afterwards, what were the economic cost of it, but that's really the only one we know. The second one is risk uncertainty. So, not only it's a tail risk, but it also is largely unknown, and of course there are all these initiatives in Switzerland and internationally that are put forward in order to understand this risk better, and for that, by definition, you need to involve a lot of stakeholders. So actually, earlier this year, I was at the event at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. So they had a roundtable on cybersecurity and financial stability. And one of the presenters at that event, like similar to our panel, it was a very diverse group of people. So one of the presenters from the industry that basically do the remediation for these very large attacks was summarizing that in the world of cybercrime, there are three types of actors: Russia, China, and American teenagers. And then if you are thinking about this, so of course some of them are for political reasons and some of them are for economic reasons. But then if you want to understand what is the risk, because that's basically what you need to do first if you want to insure it, then you really need to understand the incentives of these people, and then in case of hurricane, there is this issue just doesn't exist, right? It just happens. But in case of actors like American teenagers, their main motivation may be to impress the girlfriend. And that's a fair motivation, but how you model it, you really need to understand it, So, and finally, the last point, which I have here on the slide, is the information asymmetry issues. And here, of course, again, like insurers, we're dealing with this type of issues for basically the whole time of the existence. But here, it becomes much more complicated because the size of the loss, meaning the cost of the cyber attack, actually depends very much on what you do when it happens. But then, if you are a firm which is insured, you may actually prefer not to do anything, right? And that's because you already know that someone is going and clean up it for you, right? And that's, again, is very different from the hurricane in Florida because, if the house is destroyed by flood or hurricane, it's just destroyed by flood and hurricane. Like, it's not really your decision, the decision of policyholder to kind of, invite the hurricane to come to your backyard, Okay, so there is this issue of asymmetric information, which is extremely important in the case of cyber risk, and the same applies if you want to risk share it globally, right? Because if you want to have some reinsurance for this risk as an insurance company, then again, it reduces the incentives for the insurance company to mitigate, okay? And so as I said, like, all of these things, they're not new. They're basically inherent in any kind of insurance. The tricky part is that they all combine together in this particular risk to some extreme extent. Because if you would just have heavy tails, right, like think about earthquake or something like that, globally, even earthquake in California is really not such a big risk because you can diversify it globally and compare it to the size of the global financial market, it's really not so substantial. However, here, in order to diversify it, you would need the participation of investors who come from outside. And they're going to charge you for this risk. Actually, in case of the NatCat, of natural catastrophes, it's a risk which is not correlated with the stock market. So it's actually going to be a lot of investors that are interested to hold this risk. Think about some sovereign wealth funds or something like that, right? But in case of cyber risk, these investors are going to demand a very high risk premium. They're going to demand a lot of compensation because they understand that there are going to be some of this asymmetric information in it, okay? That they basically are going to be facing the situation with very little opportunities to control, okay? So it's very information sensitive. And that's exactly what creates a tension, because on one side, you want to draw a lot of capital into this risk, like you need to have a lot of contingent capital that if a tail event happens, you're going to pay for it. But on the other side, you will need to have a lot of compensation for this outside capital to come, okay? So, and then as a result, what we observe in the market is that actually in this market, most of the insurance capital is supplied by insurance groups themselves. So these are going to be your usual suspects like AIG, CHOP. Zurich actually has a very strong presence in the US in the insurance market. So what you see here on the graph is basically the extent to which these insurers are using the internal market, like internal capital, and you see that cyber really stands out compared to all the other lines of insurance. So what exactly do we do in this paper? Basically, we show that there is indeed a causal link between the availability of internal capital and the supply of cyber insurance. So in order to us to do this identification, so first thing we need is data, and US is great for that. So that's also like one of the initiatives that definitely would be good to develop down the road is to have this kind of data available for researchers in other places. And then we use the 2017 US Tax Act just as an external shock. And basically our results, so I don't really have much time to go into the methodology, but we show two results, that the rising cost of internal capital constrains cyber insurance supply. So indeed, it depends very much on the availability of internal capital. And this is particular for cyber risk and not so prominent for other types of insurance. So then, of course, the next question we want to ask, why? Right, so I mentioned to you these three features: heavy tails, risk uncertainty, and information asymmetry. And basically, what we also do in the paper is we develop the measures of these characteristics and kind of show that all of them, in the end, our finding is that all of them play a significant role. Again, just in the interest of time, I can talk about the risk uncertainty, so how exactly we quantify how much risk uncertainty there is. And in the US, the insurance companies have to file to the state regulators their rate changes, like all their policies and rate changes are going to be reported to state regulators. So what we have is the data that they actually file. So we have all the filings on their pricing, and we can actually see how often they update their pricing. Because if you are really savvy in the risk and the risk is changing, you're going to update it quite a lot, you know. And then so that's kind of is one characteristic. And then we show that indeed companies that are updating more, they're kind of more, have more expertise in this market. So just to conclude, the key question that I asked here is what limits the supply of cyber insurance, so why we have so little of cyber insurance. And basically our claim is that cyber insurance must rely heavily on external capital, but this capital is very difficult to obtain because of the characteristics of cyber insurance risks. So then we also investigated what are the characteristics that are relevant, and we show that all of them play their role. And finally, the last message that I would like to conclude with is that in the business of insurance, the key function is really pricing risk. And for this reason, promotion of cyber insurance market not only protects firms, but it also helps us to understand the pricing of those risks. So that's what I would advocate for. Thank you.
Anastasia, thank you so much for that, really insightful as well. And for the final keynote, we are talking about Swiss technology innovations with Martin Bosshardt, the CEO of Anapaya Systems. Good to have you.
Thank you so much. So I guess I need to bring some good news tonight. In 2015, Thomas Jordan, former president of the Swiss National Bank, initiated a program called the Swiss Secure Finance Network. Maybe you have heard of it. The Swiss Secure Finance Network is based on a new internet protocol rolled out in Switzerland. And I would like to take the next 15 minutes to talk about why this is very relevant. So we all remember when Zelensky had his speech in Switzerland, that was in June 23. We had some DDoS attacks against government websites. It was relatively loud. We also must admit these DDoS attacks have been pretty simple, not very powerful. It got a bit louder this year in August. Twint was off for a couple of hours. Actually, Twint was not attacked. Twint was just collateral damage of a larger attack. In 23, the largest attack we've seen in Switzerland was 360 gigabit per second for 14 hours or so. This attack here was not against Twint, but against Switzerland infrastructure, and that was already 760 gigabit per second for quite a while. So that's threatening, and that's also concerning. And we also learned about the latest DDoS attacks against government. They have been pretty sophisticated, but also obviously these websites haven't been protected very well. So hard to say. But reality is we see more and heftier attacks and DDoS, and reality is also we are using the internet today more and more for hypercritical infrastructure, like in the financial services sector, we pay with internet. The healthcare system doesn't work without the internet. Energy is very much depending on internet. More and more also if we use solar panels, heat pumps, it's all controllable over the app. Also if we charge an electric car, it's charging over the app. And then obviously these interfaces to the internet, to the power, can be attacked. Government obviously is in transport. We are heavily dependent on the internet, and it's concerning then also to see that the more we are moving into the digital space, that these kind of attacks also become loud. That was just a leased line broken in North Italy, bringing down world lines. So that wasn't even related directly to the internet. But it was directly related to the internet because that infrastructure was built to be super resilient. It was separated from the internet, but that's expensive. And if you lose a leased line, then you lose connection. So if you go away from the internet, then you have to bring at least 2 lines, and that makes it more expensive. So in a way, we need the internet. It's cheap, it's resilient, at the same time it's super attackable. And why is this a very bad trend? We are not really, the trend in the internet is definitely not our friend. The internet is designed that every dot is connected with every dot at all times, everywhere. And that's the superpower of internet. That's the success of internet. And that success becomes now the super weakness because we are connecting everything to the internet. We are connecting IoT devices, light bulbs, cameras, smoke detectors, you name it. We connect it all to the internet, and the internet starts to eat itself. Because this cheap equipment is really easy to attack. And this cheap equipment then can be used to attack critical infrastructure, valuable infrastructure. So we see the internet is growing right now faster than ever in the history of the internet. And that's in a way strange because almost everybody is pretty nicely connected already to the internet, right? But internet itself is growing faster than ever. And this is also what we see now in the denial of service attack landscape. They are growing not only in the number of attacks, but also in the heftiness of these attacks. So the DDoS attacks landscape is extremely threatening, and I think we can say the internet starts to eat itself. Now also bringing more and more critical infrastructure to the internet makes it more exciting to attack, to use the internet to attack targets. And that results in a fast-growing number of 0 days. A 0 day is a vulnerability of an infrastructure, of a piece of infrastructure, and finding a vulnerability that is new, that is not known to the supplier of the infrastructure, of the software, that's called a 0 day. And these 0 days are extremely valuable because you can sell them to anybody who would like to attack something. So basically, you find a 0 day, and we have very nice data on this particular case. Ivanti VPN, that's an access for remote workers. If you find a 0 day on such an infrastructure, you can enter to that company who is using this device to work from home. Now, this is done in a very professional, automated way. So every internet service you put online is in average scanned about 30,000 times a day. That's just to figure out, is there something that answers? You can compare that like walking around the house, riddling at the door, checking if there is maybe a door open. Once you have that information and you say, okay, let's try how heavy is that door? And that's called then a malicious attack or a fingerprinting attack. So basically you shoot at the door, and depending on how it riddles, how it sounds, how it responds, you understand, okay, that's probably the security measures implemented. So these attacks with a malicious intent are aimed to figure out what is there in terms of security infrastructure, or if you find directly an entry door. So on the 10th of January, we had a 0 day from Ivanti published, or it was sort of published in the dark scene. On January 15th, we already had 1,700 companies compromised. I mean, even if you want to do this in an organized way, that's a challenge. So we see on the attacker side, we have an extremely well-educated and professional organizational industry using professional tools to use a 0 day and then to attack targets. And that's exactly why the internet, as we know today, becomes very, very dangerous. Even if you are aware on 10th of January that you have a problem, you have to act super fast to not be a victim. And that becomes more and more almost impossible. So to connect a service to the internet, you always run the risk to be attacked. And that's maybe also linking then to the question of insurance. It's really hard to run something secure, and we must admit that the IT security market today is not working. It helps to prevent certain attacks, but basically it's not working. And the reason it's not working is because the internet per se is not designed to run critical infrastructure. And that was the reason why at ETH there was this initiative of research on interdomain protocol. Interdomain protocols are protocols that connect networks, interconnect networks. And that's also the internet, as we know, is the largest and most successful interdomain protocol called the BGP, Border Gateway Protocol. It interconnects 70,000 networks worldwide, creating the internet as we know. It interconnects all these networks at all time. Now, CYAN is the next generation internet that was proposed 2012 at ETH from Professor Perrick. And it's a phenomenal new way of interconnecting networks because it gives full governance on where your data is traveling. It's not like the network per se decides where your data is traveling. Before you send data, you can choose with CYAN where your data is traveling. And that's a very fundamental change in terms of security. Then also security, you are in control who can send data to you. And that's the second very, very strong security pillar. The moment you connect today an internet service to the internet, the entire world can try to connect to you and can connect to you and can try to enter your door. In CYAN, you can also say, okay, my service shall be available for the entire world, but you can also say, no, this service shall only be available for a specific group or for specific participants in the internet. For everyone else, this service is not even existent. And that's fundamental in security. And then the third pillar is resilience. The CYAN internet uses all the paths available at the same time, and that introduces an entire new resilience landscape. In the internet, today's internet, when you connect from A to B, you always get offered one path. If that path breaks, it takes a couple of seconds, minutes, sometimes really minutes to get the new path. In CYAN, you can use all the paths at the same time. So this is really the next generation internet. And what's really exciting, because of the initiative from Thomas Jordan in 2015, we have this new protocol fully rolled out in Switzerland. The Swiss interbank clearing is running since 2022, fully operational on that new infrastructure. You also see that if you bring a service on CYAN, you are no longer 9 million times scanned per quarter. Basically, you're not scanned anymore. And also, we don't see malicious attacks in that new internet because you can limit the attack surface. And I feel it's really exciting to see that Switzerland was at the forefront, not only from an innovation point of view, but also from a rollout point of view. This network is fully operational. It's fully there. It's used now in healthcare. It's also used in the energy sector. What I would say, what's a bit sad in Switzerland, we are not proud enough that we are doing this. So if you take a message from me tonight, be proud. Switzerland is at the absolute forefront if it comes to internet innovation. You should be a bit more proud of it. You also see the data on the Swiss Secure Finance Networks is one of the most resilient networks you could possibly imagine, especially because there are all the routes at the same time available. So there is no concept of failover. There is no failover. As long as there is one route, connectivity is given. So this is extremely exciting and obviously a game changer in networking per se. And it will levitate the internet, as we know, to the most resilient and most secure network there is, because it, in a way, just eliminates the weak points we have of today's internet and introduces the strong points of a resilient network to the public. And what I think is really great to know that we have now full coverage in Switzerland. So every internet access in Switzerland reaches the new internet. So it can be used for basically any service, any IoT application you can think of, can be put into the SIGN internet and still be reachable from every internet access in Switzerland. From January, we also will have full SIGN coverage in the Benelux, which is obviously also potentially very relevant for the financial services industry. So we are going to reach 40 million users, providing a new internet in a way for also e-banking or ATMs and so on. So that's very, very good news. And I hope that we can sort of lead the way for a secure internet out of Switzerland, but obviously there is a long way, because this is fundamental basic infrastructure, and it took the combustion engine almost 60 years to replace the steam engine. I hope this time we are a little faster. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that. And to the other speakers, please join me on stage. And to all of you, ladies and gents, please have your questions ready. I'll take the hot seat, the red chair. You take whichever chair you want, whichever gray chair you want. Have a seat. No seating order.
Now we have the man in one.
That's fine. That's fine. It's all good.
Should be some order, right?
Yes. Martin, let me start with you, just to really clarify a couple of things that you talked about regarding science. So this new network, which is obviously safer, will it coexist alongside the traditional internet? Will it completely replace it? Is it just something for big industries like finance as it's using it now, and then energy, healthcare, or is it also something that will be available to private users?
There are a lot of questions, but yes, it coexists. I think that's very, very crucial. I mean, it would be very stupid to think that let's shut down the old internet and come up with a new one. That's never going to happen. So it coexists, but it uses the same infrastructure, and depending on how you implement it, you can have several levels of separation. So in Switzerland, for the Swiss Secure Finance Network, that is very cleanly separated. But there is also a Swiss isolation domain, which is a little more open, more, let's say, closer to the public internet. And today, I would say it is definitely for critical infrastructure, because it's new. It takes training for people. It takes certain effort. So you wouldn't do all that effort just for low-value improvements. But obviously, for critical infrastructure, the value creation is tremendous, and I think it makes a lot of sense there.
But let me ask you, if it's so transformative, if it's so revolutionary, and if it's a lot safer, why isn't everyone doing this?
We looked at the size of the industry, and we also might want to look at the size of the security industry. There is a certain Kodak problem involved. We all make a lot of money with protecting the old internet. And the new internet, in a way, solves a lot of problem, but it needs also people who go forward first, take certain risks. And I would say we haven't reached the point where you say, oh, you have been hacked. Oh, that's your problem. You haven't been on the SIGN internet. We haven't reached that point yet. So I feel it takes a certain point, inflection point, where it's really your own fault if you're not using this new technology.
So a different mindset, if you will. The other panelists, please come in here in terms of what the catalyst could be, Stefan or anyone else.
Can I
really?
add something
Sure.
that not to Cyan, but to what Martin said in his speech, because he said we have to be prouder in Switzerland of our innovation. And I think Switzerland was just named again the most innovative country, like several years in a row. And there is a whole ecosystem of cybersecurity innovation in Switzerland. Cyan is one of the, I would say, lighthouse kind of things there, but there are many others, and there is a map that you can look at with all the different areas in cybersecurity. Sandra, if you're here, are you here? There she is. She is one of the, I think I can say, instigators of this map. She's also, one of the co-founders of other cybersecurity innovative companies in Switzerland. So, I think there is a lot going on in Switzerland, and I just wanted to add to that. I think we can be proud of that too.
Very important points. Yeah, Stefan, do you want to come in on Cyan?
Yeah, it's an ETH product, right? So
That's great, right?
It's like we're very proud of it. I think, yeah, I can only agree, but I think there might be a point where Cyan will be tested by the most capable actors out there, and they will look at what are the weaknesses, and there will also be a proving point for Cyan itself, whether you can survive the onslaught then. But until then, promote it, look for new customers out there, and go for it.
No, and I agree. I mean, Cyan is not like, bulletproof against everything you can think of. But let's say almost all the attacks we know so far are rooted in the situation that you are connected to everyone, and it's really hard to trace back from where the attack is coming. And Cyan, in a way, fixes that fundamental problem. So obviously, if you are inside a Cyan community, you can be attacked from this inside group as well. So this is with every network the case, but it's a big difference if you have, let's say, 10,000 participants, or if you have a couple of billion participants. So yeah, you can reduce the attack surface tremendously.
And let me bring in another element here that some of you have already mentioned in your presentations, obviously the power of AI. How much more potent is any attack with the use of AI? We know, for example, the North Koreans are using it. Obviously, that's what I read. I don't know if that's fake news, but...
Yeah, they used it, but it's literally they used OpenAI and had some questions there, right? So it's not like they really used it. It's like they had the most simple questions they asked on ChatGPT, and of course OpenAI is the company, they see all the prompts that are coming in, right? So it's of course they had a very easy game of figuring out, hey, where does this prompt come from? Which user is this? Okay, it's coming from likely a North Korean cluster. And so we haven't really, I would say when it comes to cybersecurity, we haven't really seen the benefits of AI, both on the offensive side and the defensive side. I think the defensive side kind of makes a little bit more sense. On the offensive side, it's just their operators, they're so much more capable, and we have to watch what OpenAI comes up with and other AI companies in terms of really servicing that market. Currently, it's a little bit all over the place, and so maybe there's a Swiss company that wants to fill that gap. I don't know.
Interesting view here, because what I usually hear from cyber experts is that, hey, with AI, our defenses are going to be a lot stronger. Obviously, the attacks can be a lot more sophisticated and scale as well, and in terms of scope as well. Any views on this, or does it make it, the insurance part even trickier? I don't know.
I mean, definitely, I have not much to say on the technical side, especially sitting to experts from ETH.
On the insurance side, how does AI play into some of the fat tails that you've discussed, or some of the cost element?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the fact that that companies digitalize more and more makes them more and more exposed, assuming that they're using the internet like the conventional one, right? So, and that's exactly the point that was raised just in the beginning of the presentation there, So, of course, it creates some risks, and it also creates some efficiencies, and it also potentially could, especially in case of remediation, I think, because one of the big parts of these insurance products is that they help you to remediate after the attack has happened. But then suppose that it's a tail attack, right? So the way it works right now is that they have literally subcontractors, like a group of firms that are going to come and help you fix the issues. Then if you have a tail event, then it means that you need to have a lot of those people. So there is just not enough people to serve everyone, right? So and that part also needs to be automated if you really want to do it in some more consistent way. So of course, from the operational point of view, or from the point of view of managing claims, like the more automated it becomes, the fatter is the tails that you can tolerate. But then you also open, I mean, it's a bit of a trade-off, like in everything, right?
So I guess overall the jury's still out, or Martin, what do you think?
Can I just add one thing,
yes,
please?
Yes, of course.
I mean, what probably all of us have seen is there's a lot less spelling errors in all those phishing mails. And
that's the main benefit.
Here we're not talking state-sponsored attacks, right? We're not talking somebody who really, really wants to hack, the Swiss National Bank. We are talking cyber crime, and that is a big problem in everywhere, right? So to just put that into perspective, I think AI helps a lot on the attack side. Actually, Stefan, I might have a different opinion there. We
totally
can talk, but it's not yet probably in these sophisticated instances, but I think in the broad scale of very nicely worded phishing emails that then allow the bad guys to enter. It's definitely helping.
Mm-hmm. Finally, your 2 cents on AI, and then I want to toss it over to the audience.
No, I think at a low profile it helps the attacker. High profile, I think the defense also becomes stronger. But it's really simple. I mean, if you can augment a voice, or if you can come up with a nice phishing email, it really helps. Also, if you can run a professional search on all the passwords people were typing on some notepads, and there obviously autopilot from Microsoft is a great tool. If you can search for all the passwords in a company, and you might find a couple of more than without the AI.
Any audience questions? Yep, there we go. Do we need, sorry, a microphone is coming.
So first, what would be the impact of quantum on sign? And the problem with the attribution to a state when it's linked to an exclusion of coverage, it means that there's an incentive to attribute to a state, and that means war. And then the problem with updating the fees or the coverage when linked to either invasive or micromanaged surveillance or arbitrary pricing or refusal to insure. And then lastly...
Sorry, that was a question to
yes,
her. Okay,
yes.
so let's, how about we start with the...
Please. Assumptions of orthogonality to other losses may be faulty. And when it comes to sovereign wealth funds, themselves fragilize states and remove their financial defense in reserves.
All right, let's start with the quantum question, and then maybe you can tackle the rest. No.
I think
that was that was very specific.
Quantum is a very big question.
That is a very big question, and I appreciate your questions. Thank you so much for that. So let's talk about quantum. Can it sort of undo the encryption?
Yes, it can undo the encryption. The good news about Cyan is, when you choose a path, that path is cryptographically signature signed. So basically you cannot tamper that path. But the good news is that path is only valid while you're using. So quantum computer could potentially reroute, but then you need to be in route of a communication stream and being capable to temper the signature of that path information. That's extremely unlikely. We're going to I believe we are closer to quantum computer than we think, but at the same time, we are definitely far, far more away of having small quantum chips everywhere in every router deployed so that we could temper sign. And then also the good news, we can easily upgrade to a quantum proof encryption stack. That takes more energy, more compute power, so we try not to do that at this point, but if quantum computers are there, SIGN is absolutely prone against that. So I don't see a problem there. Quantum computer will be a huge problem for encrypted data in rest. Huge problem. Not for protocols using cryptography for data in transfer.
Stefan, you seem to disagree somewhat?
No, I don't disagree, but...
You're pondering the response?
Yeah, I'm pondering the response. But so all of you have probably heard Google, Project Willow, and so on. And they really undersold it, what they were actually doing. And they were like, oh, yeah, in a decade we'll be ready. I think they might be ready earlier. But when it comes to, I think, encryption, the question usually comes for intelligence services. The Chinese, for example, they go out and steal all the private data that they can essentially get their hands on. But when quantum comes around, they can probably decrypt everything, right? But what is the intelligence they're actually decrypting then? It's like intelligence from 5 years ago, right? 10, 15, 2 years ago. It's like an intelligence ages like milk, right? It's not like fine wine. It's like that intelligence might be totally useless, right? So it's really a question then also, it's the mass of intelligence they've gathered. They have to categorize this. They have to really look through it. Can AI help them? Maybe it can. Maybe it hallucinates them. And then they have something bad on their end. It's like, so I think there are many problems that are coming together. So far, post-quantum encryption is totally fine. We're essentially, I don't think we've settled on a standard, but we're very close to it. And then it comes to the adoption phase. It's like, who adopts it? Will they be able to adopt it? Do they want to adopt it? And there will be some that essentially will be left behind, I guess, right? And those institutes will have to, or those companies will then be the easiest targets. But so far, I don't have any qualms about quantum, no qualms about AI. It's like, let's
You're
see.
pretty relaxed overall, it seems. Let's come to the insurance-related questions.
Yeah, so basically here I heard two themes. So the first one was on the ability of state to be a residual insurer effectively. And in that respect, I would say that we actually did have an experience of this kind just some years ago during the pandemic, right? Because effectively the state became the residual insurer and rescued lots of enterprises in Switzerland. But then it didn't come, it didn't come without a cost, right? Because then we had inflation, and there is still some aftermath, like the macroeconomic consequences of those interventions, which were present in Switzerland, pretty much in the same scale as in the U.S. So in the U.S., of course, because of the size of the economy and the role of the dollar, those effects were much more pronounced, but they were still present. And in my view, insurance is really an organized way to respond to uncertainty. And actually, for these large risks, we can think harder. There is always a way for government to come in and bail out if you are rich. It's better to be rich than poor, obviously. But even here, you are testing the fiscal capacity. And I would rather spend this taxpayers' money on healthcare or education, on some other areas, which actually makes Switzerland so excellent and helps us to build innovation, etc. So that I would say that's kind of course, in some situations it's very important to involve everyone to make insurance work. But I think the issue of insurability is really very often is the issue of information and those access to capital markets. Like those are the kind of questions that I think is more constructive to focus on, how to make it work better and to learn more, and then we become more resilient. So that would be my view.
All right. Thank you so much. Any further questions? There's one over there. And then here.
Yes, I have a question less technical than this, is how do we train the next generation? Because this seems a problem for the next generation, right? If the state will be attacked and the war will happen, probably it's because people like me are not trained to detect this type, or they are not trained to choose their solutions. What is the role of school? From which age? What are the role of investors in this process? And how can they be trained? Because I guess investments should start today, latest, that the next generation is actually ready to face such situations.
Very important question. Who wants to take it?
I can start. So I think I've given one example of how the next generation can be trained. I think that's an excellent example, but definitely it's only a small portion of people, right? I was just on a conference the other day, and Florian Schütz, who is the head of the NCSC, he was asked the question, or he was asking the question: do we have enough cybersecurity personnel? You know, because there's always a discussion. There is such a big lack of cybersecurity personnel, and he basically answered it with a different question and said, are we asking the right question? And I think he has a point, because what he's saying is everybody of us and the next generation, but also us, as maybe not all of us are 20 anymore, we are part of the system and should be somewhat knowledgeable about cybersecurity, because if we do our job right, then we don't have to have a cybersecurity expert sitting next to us all the time telling us what to do and what not to do. So I think there is a great need for a general education for everybody, for kids definitely, because I think they are especially vulnerable, the small kids, but also for everybody else. And there is kind of like a basic understanding of cyber hygiene that everybody of us should follow. Doesn't answer your question completely, but I think it gives a little spin to do we actually have to build on and like a huge workforce of cybersecurity specialists? Yes, we do need them, but we also need everybody of us to take that topic seriously and be engaged and be more knowledgeable than probably most of us are currently.
Mm-hmm. Let's do a few more questions.
Stefan has
here.
a different opinion.
Yeah, I have a different opinion, but if you want to take a different question.
Sorry, I just see so many hands being raised, so let's do a few more. You decide.
Thank you. So I have a question from a geopolitical point of view. The risks that they attack the hardware, so the big cables, are increasing, I would say. So, and we're interested to understand what happens if, let's say, they cut one cable, a big one, maybe two cables. Are we totally shut down then? How long would it be possible to retrieve these cables? So what's your take on these attacks?
I think you are more competent in that.
I think what you will see if you want to take down the internet that way, you really have to cut cables very synchronously. So at the same time, you cut down 10 cables, then you will see an impact. But other than that, it's not all of these data doesn't travel to all of these cables, right? There are workarounds around this. Now you have Starlink coming in, so the whole space domain, a portion of the internet will be funneled through that. So if one cable in the Ostsee gets cut, it's like nobody cares, honestly.
It's just a minor geopolitical incident, right?
But then NATO comes in, the Germans come in. Of course, they need money for the armed forces, and then the whole thing gets hyped. But it's like, I mean, the Chinese sailors, the Chinese boats there, I don't think they did it on purpose, to be honest. But you create this whole story around it, and it comes, the internet is in danger and so on. We need to have research on this and that and forth, and then the money flows, right? So there is an ecosystem for these people to get their own work. And I think we really have to be careful about these threats in terms of, hey, they want to take down the internet. If one cable gets cut, nobody cares, not even the Russians. So
Let's do one just behind you. There you go.
Okay, thank you. With Cyan, I have a question, and I make a false claim maybe. So you said, there's little people connected to Cyan, and so therefore the attacks, well, I know it's not a causal connection, were very low, but once everybody is connected, wouldn't then the attacks just go up, as it is the case with the normal internet? And how, if it is not, how do you ensure reachability and the service levels that we are used to know from, that we are accustomed to with the normal internet?
Thank you very much for that question. First, it shows you really listen. And secondly, I believe a lot of people also asked that question, but didn't ask it loud. So actually, Cyan brings a whole arsenal against these kind of attacks. So the most relevant arsenal, or the most relevant weapon, is as called hidden path or private path. So when you start to communicate with someone, with an unknown individual, after a while you can decide, or Cyan can decide, this is a trusted person, and then you provide a hidden path. So from then on, this individual communicates hidden with you. And let's say you are an e-banking platform with a couple of million users. After a while, 99% of your users will use hidden path. And then obviously the paths that are still available for the public are still sort of attackable. So you could DDoS that portion, but that portion then would render only 1% of your users incapable to connect to your service. So 98% of your user base would not be affected of the DDoS attack. And therefore, a DDoS really runs or renders irrelevant. So the whole concept of DDoS is not really happening in the Cyan ecosystem.
Now, I know that there are many other questions here. We appreciate them. That said, let's take these questions outside over drinks and some snacks, some apéro. Thank you, everyone involved, all the speakers, the organizers. Big thank you to you for your time and your interest and your questions. Let's continue the conversation outside. Thank you.
Thank you so much.